Hey, hello everyone. Welcome to our next episode of Coffee Talk by Callstack, where we talk about latest and greatest in React and React Native news. Today at Callstack we have a Learning and Development Day, which is a day when we gather all together to discuss learning and development topics. And I was thinking I could get some of my colleagues today on podcast to discuss our latest and greatest in open source activities that we do here at Callstack. So my first guest is, as always, as usual, Mike Pierzchała, our head of technology, who is responsible for our open source activities. Hello, Mike.
Yeah, great to be here, as always. This is a coffee talk, and we are supposed to drink coffee, but today I have a tea.
I have a Red Bull
too early for coffee for me, and
we have some caffeine, right? We can rebrand this as caffeine
definitely.
talk.
And there's some caffeine in tea as well, so it's not too much.
Okay, Mike, let's jump into the topics. I have two for you. First, please explain briefly, what do we do at Callstack in terms of OSS? What is our structure there?
So OSS, as it stands for open source software, at Callstack we have a R&D and open source department, or a technology department, that governs all of our actions in the open source, and we invest heavily in that as a company. It's vital part of our business. It's in our company's DNA, and as a part of it, we structure it in two ways. We have our maintainers that maintain the open source libraries that we believe are important for the community, and some of our libraries, and also the deep work research, where we dive way deeper than with the maintainer stuff. So
it's not just the maintaining, but actually researching and developing new solutions, right?
Yeah, and the research part usually happens behind closed doors, and it's eventually open source.
Okay, so, let's jump into the research topic first. And I think this one is a bit controversial, if we can say that. We are recording this on Friday. So this dropped just a day or 2 days ago, the request for comments. Can you say something about this?
Yeah. So yesterday we launched a proposal on the discussions and proposals repository on upstreaming the Expo config plugins specification into React Native core. So we want to support Expo config plugins by default, and React Native CLI apps. There are multiple ways to attack this problem, and this is not the only goal that we want to solve. We are actually there for, as a part of Callstack's R&D, we're there to fix or vastly improve the upgrading experience of React Native apps. This is number one problem for many years. And there's this Expo that's handling this for years to come, with one of the or two of the ideas, the config plugins and pre-built. So we thought there is a space where it actually would make sense to adopt those ideas into the core of React Native, to make it a part of the ecosystem. So it's not only Expo, it's just React Native, where Expo and React Native CLI can implement specific config plugins. And of course, it's a bit controversial because...
before we jump into the controversy part, if I will explain in my own words what I think the config plugins are, and please tell me how wrong I am, okay? So I think what the config plugins are is a language to change the contents of native files inside Expo React Native projects.
Yeah, I think you could say that. So it's a kind of a specification, a set of tools, modifications or mods, as they call it, where you can write your modifications to the specific native files, like Xcode configurations or Android, or some. Or even some regexes in terms where there is no good parser for something that we want to modify, and to do it reliably. So
Yeah.
Expo config plugins allow us to write our modifier so that the native code can be generated for us instead of being there, where we can modify it on our own, etc. And this is like the deal breaker for upgrading. We
Yeah, I
have
was I
all
was
this
going
code
to
checked
ask
out.
you. I'm going to ask you, how does that impact upgrading? So again, I'm gonna throw something out there and tell me how wrong I am. The way we are modifying CLI projects right now is that we modify them directly, right? So I
Yeah.
can write something in my application Java file, and then when I try to upgrade, the upgrade tool does not recognize my added lines. And this can be a problem. And the way the plugin works is more reliable because they work the same way for everyone, and they apply the same patches for everyone in the same order.
Yeah, so there's quite a simplification, but the gist of it is there, right? So
Okay.
so you can basically, like, the problem with upgrades, like one of the bigger problems is that we have all of this native code checked out in our repository. It's also a benefit in many cases, so it's worth to take that into account. But it is there. So anytime we upgrade our React Native dependency, we need to make sure, hey, did it actually change something at the default template and edit those files manually? If you've upgraded React Native app, you know that it's a pain basically. And with a mechanism such as config plugins, we would be able to essentially generate those files. So they won't be, in many cases, they wouldn't need to be checked into the source control. So that gives you this leverage of upgrading React Native version to any version that you like, and it will generate the files for you, provided that the config plugins are obeying some specific requirements and that they are compatible with the template, with the files, with the native files out there. And that's the tricky bit, and that's why we believe there is a space for moving the config plugin specification into, or closer to, the React Native core.
Okay.
So that it's specification that's
Jumping into, I understand how it is helpful for upgrading the project, and I think it can be a great help to do that. Jumping into controversy, it's hard not to notice that in the Twitter discussions, in the RFC discussions, we have some voices saying that you can already do that. Like, you can already use config plugins inside React Native. So why upstreaming this then?
Yeah, you can already do that with by installing Expo and running pre-build yourself, which will make changes to the to those native files at specific modifications to those native files. And why it's and at the same time, like, there is a lot of misunderstanding of what Expo is, what it isn't. There is a lot of clients that we also interact with that for many reasons that are oftentimes invalid, just don't want to use Expo for a reason. They want to have non-Expo app, whatever, and there's and Expo accounts for like 40% of React Native downloads, so it's a big chunk, but it's
Yeah.
not all of the apps. And I think as a community, we want to be in a space where most of the apps are either written in Expo or they're just governed by it or using their tools, and only some part of apps that needs to support extra platforms or need to be at the very edge of React Native, because Expo is always some versions behind, usually minor versions. So it's not a big deal for everyone. Yeah, it's about Expo is great, and it has its own constraints. It has its own design goals, which are not always the same as being on the edge of React Native, using alternative bundlers, using naive version of React Native, and experimenting with that. And we want to make sure that it's all possible, all supported. And now we try to, with this
RFC.
We want to start discussion on how to like advance the ecosystem forward. It doesn't matter if it's
That's
gonna end up in React Native Core this way or another.
Sorry, Michał.
Yeah.
That's the point that I wanted to end up on. So this is an RFC, request for comment. It doesn't say that we are going to do this next week and you have to deal with it. We are asking everyone for their opinion and how we can move on with this idea of how to make React Native more unified, right? And it doesn't have to be exactly like you and other folks at Callstack wrote in the RFC. It can be some other way, but let's start talking about this. Thanks, Michał, for joining our today's Coffee Talk. Have a great rest of your day. And I will go on with the Coffee Talk and with more updates from our open source space. And right now, to talk with me about the Super Apps Showcase, I want to invite Rafix and Ola to the show. Hello, Rafix. Hello, Ola. Ola, can you tell us something about what you do at Callstack and what was your involvement in Super Apps template?
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me. It's a real pleasure. So I'm the senior content specialist at Callstack, and today I have the pleasure of speaking on behalf of my brilliant marketing team. So our involvement was basically, just making the most of the knowledge of our great React Native experts, of our super app experts, and just turning this knowledge into content, which I'm also excited to talk about.
Okay, and one of the super apps expert that you are talking about is Rafix. Rafix, can you tell us something about your involvement in super app space? Rafix, I'm sorry to say, but you are muted right now. It's like a normal conference call at work.
Hello. I hope you can hear me now.
Thank you. Okay, we can hear you now.
Sure, I can talk about it. My involvement in the Super App showcase was mainly just coordinating the stuff. The main authors of the showcase was the first one was Andrew, and then Jakub Romańczyk took over from him, and he's the last person who make it into a shape that we can see. And I can also speak from Re.Pack maintainer perspective. I'm super glad that this content was created, that we have this Super App Showcase, because in Re.Pack repo, there are a lot of issues created where people are asking how to scale the architecture that Re.Pack enables you to implement. And now I'll be able just to link them to the showcase and tell them.
Yeah, actually, I think
you do this.
You touched on very important subjects. So let's lay some groundwork here. Re.Pack is a tool that allows you to split your JavaScript bundle into remote chunks that you can download to your app, and Rafik is actually maintaining this. And the thing that we released now, just like a day ago or 2 days ago, I'm really excited about this, is the Super Apps Showcase. So what exactly is Super Apps Showcase and how does it connect to Re.Pack?
So it like takes the tool, the Re.Pack as a tool, and builds on top of it. Like shows maybe not a full real world app, but something that is close to being a pretty good prototype of that app. And it shows how you can structure things and connect them in a real world use case. Because previously we had a repo, which was, if I remember correctly, was called Re.Pack Examples, and it just showed how you can do simple things with Re.Pack, or maybe not so simple things, because there were some complex examples that are like recursively referencing one mini app from the other. I don't want to dive into the details here, but they were not like a real world use case. They were just showcasing what you can achieve with that. And now in the showcase, we basically tell the world how we see the best architecture side of things and how you should structure your apps. Like you can base on that example.
Yeah, so from what I saw in the repository, the way that we, Re.Pack team and Super Apps team, as we think how you should use it, is we have set up a monorepo for you to clone, to fork, to play with yourself. And we reference all of the other parts of the monorepo in one big super app. Really excited stuff. So what are the resources beside the monorepo that we are bundling in this huge release?
Yep, actually, I feel like there's plenty of knowledge that we have to share about both Re.Pack and super apps, because we feel like this concept is not yet as popular in the West as it could be. So we prepared some resources for both technical and business audiences. So that's really a lot, and probably I won't be able to tell you all about it, but you will find all of them in the show notes later on. But we have, for example, the technical FAQ for developers and tech leaders. We have resources on optimizing development and team efficiency in the super app landscape. We have step-by-step guide to super app development and the case study of our super app showcase. So that's already a lot. But we also have an FAQ for business leaders, for those who want to jump into super app development and haven't yet tried it. And we also have some plans for more. So there are plenty of things going on in the next weeks and months, I believe.
Okay, and aren't we like doing some kind of webinar very soon to talk about all of these things? It seems like a lot of reading for one person to do right now.
Yeah, so there is going to be a webinar. It's planned for the 10th of May, and I think you all are invited. We'll be also sharing more details about it in the show notes. It will be focused on updates to Re.Pack and some practical insights about super apps and the use of Re.Pack in this context.
Oh yeah, okay, awesome. Last thing that I want to have your opinion on, because what we are doing here, releasing this Super Apps template, Super Apps Showcase, is to give people an ready-to-use architecture, let's say, of applying Re.Pack in the real world. But I know from discussions from with other developers that there is some confusion about how Re.Pack should be. It's not about how to apply Re.Pack in the architecture, but how to apply Re.Pack in the business case. If they should use Re.Pack, should use Super App in their business case. So I hope, I don't want you to answer this on this show, but I hope you can touch on this subject in the webinar as well.
Yeah, we surely will.
Okay, thank you, Ola, for joining us for the coffee talk. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope we'll get to talk with you pretty soon.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Rafix, please stay on the air, because what I want to talk with you particularly about is updates in Re.Pack. So if you can let us have a peek behind the curtain, what's going on there.
Sure, sure. We're currently in a release candidate phase of version 3.2.0. There's our C1. You can fetch from GitHub now and just play with it. Although there will be some slight changes to the API as it's a release candidate. So there will be some breaking changes before we release it like in the final version. And there are basically two features that will come with this release. The first one is a built-in way to handle remote assets in the Re.Pack itself, like a extension of a Webpack loader and also a Webpack plugin that will be baked into the Re.Pack. It was problematic. There were a lot of issues in the repo itself because previously there was no built-in way to handle remote assets coming from mini apps. You either had to implement it yourself manually, which was not a great solution, and there was another way to just inline the assets into the bundles of the mini apps that you're on demand fetching. And it was also not a good idea because it's like if your mini app is asset heavy, it will explode the bundle size. So
yeah, and I can imagine that you can reference you may want to reference the same asset in separate mini apps. So
yeah,
that's another issue.
So the first thing is like a way to handle remote assets, and I think it's almost ready. So if you want to play with that, as I said, just go on and pull the latest RC candidate. And the second thing is code sign-in. So as you know, Re.Pack is mostly it's a good choice for big organizations and large development teams. So the security there is a must. And we wanted to make sure that there's a built-in thing into the Re.Pack that will help you ensure the security. So this is like halfway done. There's still some work being done by Kuba Romańczyk on that, as we're talking right now. And
like today, now.
Yeah. I was just like messaging with him on Slack before this episode. So yeah, there's some work being done right now. I think we plan to finalize it in the next week, so in the week of 24th of April.
Okay.
And yeah, I invite everyone to check out the code, to play it with it. And if you have any comments, any suggestions, just we're on a GitHub, open an issue or anything. That's
sure. I hope we can drop this episode right after the weekend, so people have a chance to contribute to the RC, to the like the final solution. Thank you, Rafik, so much. I really enjoyed having you on the show. And you might, if you are watching us, you might notice that there is someone else sitting with Rafik in our podcast studio in Wrocław. That is Łukasz Walczak, pseudonym Ryu, who actually today he's gonna say everything about it. But like I said in the beginning of the episode, today on Friday we have the Learning and Development Day at Callstack, and Łukasz is actually leading a team of paper maintainers. He is the main maintainer of paper, and they will have some planning today around this. So I invited him to the show to tell us all about it. What are the plans for for paper? How are we looking at them?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. And yeah, thanks for having me here again. And as always, when I appear in the podcast studio, probably I will talk about the paper. So yeah, the same thing today. So right now in the paper, we are in the version 5.7, and two material designs are still supported. And currently we are focused mainly on the fixing bugs, but from my perspective and from my experience working in the open source, on the open source project, it's all about having fun. So we also adding some features, and recently, thanks to Tomek Janicek, we extended our dynamic color schemes generator. So users can customize their themes by setting primary, secondary, or tertiary colors, or even custom colors. And it's based on the algorithms from Material Color Utilities. And it has the same functionality as material theme builder, but it generates the theme compatible with the paper. Yeah, so this is the current status of the paper.
And that is not the RC, that is something that you can use right now, and you can add this first, second, and third color and custom colors in your app.
Exactly.
Okay. So what are you going to do today with your team of, I don't know, few people working actively on paper? What are you planning for V6?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, we have today upskilling day, and I will take that time to organize the creative workshop, let's say. So we are going to collect some ideas for the V6. We'll create some kind of the roadmap for the next version. We'll set some plans for the next 6 months, and I think that V6 will be more stable, more mature, more performant, and
More better.
and more customizable. Because in the previous version, we had to rush a bit because we wanted to release material use support as soon as possible. There was some, let's say, pressure from the community asking where we'll get the material use support. We would like to play with it and so on. So yeah, right now it's time to chill. It's time to focus on the code base, simplify it, simplify components code, and make the code base more approachable for new contributors.
Yeah. Awesome. One question that I want to ask. So you said the V5 was rushed a little bit. You had to deliver for the community the material design V3, the material EU, but you kept the MD2, the material design second version in place. Are you going to deprecate the support for material design V2 in paper version 6?
The decision is not made yet. Definitely, it will be that topic for our workshop today. But yeah, as on the previous couple presentation, I was saying that we made it because it was possible, because we had solid team. But at the same time, we created some kind of the tech debt. And currently in the code base, we have like more over 100 checks is free. And most likely we'll drop the support for MD2. However, we'll do our best to make components even more customizable. So user who wants to keep the MD2 style, unfortunately, we have to adjust their components by themselves. Maybe we will create some kind of presets. Don't know yet. But generally, we want to go back to the idea of paper being the solid base for your components library. So we want to simplify it.
So yeah, you will be making all of those decisions today. I'm looking forward to the outcome of this, and I'm looking forward for the first RC of paper V6. No pressure though. I can wait. I'm not the community. I can wait.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you everyone. That was our episode recording during the upskilling day, the learning and development day at Callstack, where we have all of our developers learning and developing new things and working on open source as well. So thank you, Rafix. Thank you
for having me.
Łukasz. Thank you, Ola, who is already off the air, and thank you, Michał, who is already off the air as well. I hope you to see sometime soon. And yeah, that was the episode. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye.